snow hammered the rusted RV doors as the little girl clutched a wrinkled letter marked "To Hope." I opened it and realized someone wanted her silenced. The storm had settled into a white hiss, muffling the sound of everything but my own breath. The RV graveyard lay behind the decommissioned truck stop, where stripped metal husks leaned into the wind like forgotten monuments. I saw her through a cracked windshield first, a shape too small to belong in that cold. When I opened the door, a blast of frigid air spilled in, biting through my gloves. She was curled in the back corner, half wrapped in a torn sleeping bag, fingers frozen around a paper envelope. Her eyes fluttered, unfocused. Hey, easy now," I murmured, dropping to my knees. "Name's Brian. I'm with the county sheriff's department." Her lips trembled. "Hope," she whispered, barely audible. "Is that your name?" She didn't answer. Her grip on the letter tightened as if the word itself were a promise she couldn't afford to lose. I lifted her into my arms. She weighed nothing. The radio crackled as I carried her toward the patrol truck. "Dispatch, this is Lieutenant Foster. I've got a child, female, maybe 6, found at the old RV lot off Highway 21. Condition, possible hypothermia. Request EMS to High Desert Children's." Inside the cab, the heater roared to life. She blinked at the red and blue lights flickering against the snow. For a second, she seemed to search their reflections as if expecting someone else to appear. At the hospital, the automatic doors slid open with a sharp metallic whine. She flinched violently, twisting toward me. Instinct kicked in. I knelt, eye level. "You're safe. It's just the door." Nurse Anna Collins moved fast, guiding us through triage. Frostbite's mild. She's dehydrated, probably hasn't eaten in a day. Anna's voice softened. "Where did you find her?" "RV graveyard. Alone." I glanced at the letter in the evidence bag. The words "To Hope" were smeared, but the ink beneath looked deliberate. Anna's brow furrowed. "There's something in her chart history. Danielle Miller filed missing person reports 2 months ago. That name? Ring a bell?" I shook my head. "No address?" "Boise, P.O. Box. No forwarding info." The girl, Hope, sat bundled now in a fleece blanket, small hands resting on the stuffed bear the hospital kept for trauma cases. Her eyes darted toward me each time the doors hissed again. I handed her a fresh electric throw blanket from the lost and found bin, still in its plastic. "This one's yours," I said quietly. "It stays warm, even if everything else doesn't." Her fingers brushed mine, cold but alive. "Hope," she said again, as if to remind both of us that she still existed. When she drifted to sleep, I went back to the evidence box. The envelope was heavier than I expected. Inside, along with a short note, "If you find her, follow the key," was a tiny brass key with the stamp at P.O. 4179. By morning, I stood at the Boise post office counter. The clerk looked up the number and returned with a small parcel wrapped in duct tape and string. Inside, I found a tin lockbox and a stack of photocopied case files labeled Miller, Danielle, County Nursing Oversight. One page stopped me cold. Handwritten notes on falsified guardianships. Names of elderly residents transferred off books. A sticky note read, "They'll come after her next." When I turned, a man in a gray parka was standing across the street, phone camera trained on me. For a heartbeat, the wind carried a low whistle through the flagpole, like something warning me off. But I wasn't backing away. Not now. The man in the gray parka ducked into a sedan and drove off before I could catch a plate. The box in my hands suddenly felt heavier than the whole blizzard pressing down on Boise. Inside the sheriff's office, coffee burned on the warmer. The smell clung to the walls. Deputy Ruiz raised an eyebrow when I set the evidence on his desk. "You went to the post office before forensics cleared it?" "Couldn't risk the trail going cold," I said. "There's more here than a missing person case. Danielle Miller was tracking county guardianships. Look at this. Finch's name shows up 3 times. Ruiz frowned. "Gerald Finch? Director of Elder Services?" Yeah, these aren't just financial irregularities. Danielle was mapping fake guardianships, funneling benefits through shell accounts. And now her kid turns up in a frozen junkyard. He exhaled, long and low. That's one hell of an accusation, Lieutenant. I know, but it's starting to fit. Across town, Nurse Anna Collins was in her small apartment, staring at the file photos I'd texted her. I'd asked if she recognized any of the names. She hesitated before replying, yes. I saw Finch's emails. I thought it was over when I left. I drove back to the hospital. Snow had stopped, but the world looked colorless, stripped clean. Hope was awake, drawing circles on a paper placemat with a purple crayon. She looked up when I entered. "Morning," I said. "You warm enough?" She nodded, chin tucked. The door didn't make a noise today. Anna appeared beside her. She's calmer when it stays open. Must be something about being trapped. I studied the girl. Has she said anything else about her mom? Only, Mommy said wait. That's it. Anna hesitated, then handed me a folded note. You should see this. I found it in her coat pocket during intake. Didn't want to give it to evidence until I knew it wasn't just scrap. The paper was stiff from cold and dirt, but the handwriting was steady. If I disappear, Brian Foster will know what to do. Trust him. DM. I stared at it, pulse in my throat. She knew my name. Anna's voice was barely above a whisper. Danielle interned at Finch's department last year. She mentioned you once, said you were the only cop who ever took her complaint seriously. My stomach turned. I remembered her now. Danielle Miller, late 20s, brought in 3 years ago after a nursing home whistleblower claim got buried. I'd filed a report that vanished 2 days later. She'd thanked me anyway. And now her daughter was sitting in front of me, coloring the same looping pattern over and over like a record skipping. "What are you drawing, Hope?" She lifted the crayon. The road Mommy said to follow. Anna and I exchanged a glance. By that night, the hospital's security cameras picked up 2 men loitering near the rear exit. One in a county maintenance jacket, another with no badge. When Ruiz ran facial recognition, the second matched a private contractor tied to Finch's office. I didn't wait. I rewrote Hope's transfer papers myself, listing the Children's Recovery Ward as temporary witness protection under state supervision. Anna agreed to stay overnight as medical guardian. At 2 a.m., I watched from the service corridor as Finch's men scanned the main floor. They didn't know about the basement route. Anna led Hope by the hand down the narrow passage, past humming pipes and flickering bulbs. "Almost there, sweetheart," she whispered. I trailed behind, gun holstered, heart pounding. When we reached the ambulance dock, Snow whipped in again. I opened the side door, ushering them in. "Where are we going?" Anna asked. "Somewhere they can't follow." The engine caught, headlights slicing through the storm. In the mirror, Hope pressed her hand to the glass, watching the hospital lights fade, her reflection a blur beside mine, and for the first time she spoke more than one word. "Is Mommy there?" I gripped the wheel. "We're going to find her, Hope. I promise." The highway to the county line was buried in white. The wipers thudded in rhythm, each pass carving a narrow tunnel through the storm. Hope slept curled beneath the electric blanket, her small frame outlined by the pulsing dashboard light. Anna sat beside her, arms folded tight. "You sure about this, Lieutenant? If Finch's men are following, we're not just violating procedure, we're targets." "I've broken worse rules for less reason," I said quietly. The Miller woman left a trail for someone to find. She trusted me, which means she knew this would happen. Outside, a road sign blurred past. Pine Bluff, 6 miles. Anna looked over. "There's an old ranger station up that way. Power grid's independent. We could hole up there for the night." We turned onto the unplowed road. Snow rose like ghosts in the headlights. Inside the station, everything smelled of pine resin and old smoke. The emergency generator coughed once, then hummed alive. Anna spread blankets near the wood stove while I checked the perimeter cameras. Hope stirred, murmuring something in her sleep. I leaned close. "What's that, kiddo?" She mumbled. "Mommy said, find the light on the hill." I froze. The light on the hill, that was what locals called the Langdon estate, perched over the valley like a fortress of glass and steel. Victor Langdon, billionaire philanthropist, head of Langdon Infrastructure, and one of Finch's largest contractors. Anna caught my expression. "What is it?" "Maybe our light's not a metaphor," I said. We stayed through the night. By morning, the storm had thinned to a drizzle of ice. I stepped outside to call Ruiz. He answered on the first ring. "You're a hard man to find, Brian. Finch's office filed a complaint. Says you kidnapped a minor." "Let them. Check your inbox. I just sent a copy of Danielle Miller's file. There's enough fraud in there to bury half the county board. Get the AG's office involved before Finch spins it." Ruiz whistled. "That's a hell of a risk." "Then make it count." Back inside, Anna was stirring instant oatmeal over the stove. Hope sat at the table, watching the steam curl. "Smells good," I said. Anna smiled faintly. "She's starting to talk again. Asked if she could write a letter." "To who?" "To the light on the hill." Hope answered softly. "Mommy said it's where truth lives." I crouched beside her. "What do you want to say?" She frowned, thinking hard. "That I'm here. That I have her papers, and that the bad men are scared." Anna and I exchanged a glance, both startled by her clarity. Later that day, I called Langdon's corporate office expecting a secretary. Instead, Victor Langdon himself answered. His voice was deep, clipped. "Lieutenant Foster, I've been following your department's handling of the Miller case. You have the evidence?" "I do, and Finch knows I do. He's sending people after the girl." "Bring her here," Langdon said. "My security can hold them off. I've been waiting for something to tie Finch to the guardianship racket." Danielle reached out before she disappeared. Hope tugged at my sleeve, as if she could sense something turning. "We'll see Mommy there?" "I don't know yet," I said honestly, "but we'll find what she wanted us to." By sunset, we wound up the hillside road. The Langdon mansion glowed against the gray sky. Massive glass panels, security gates, cameras tracking every movement. Guards met us halfway, ushering us through. Inside, Langdon waited by a fireplace, tall, silver-haired, with the quiet focus of someone used to getting answers. He crouched so he was level with Hope. "Your mother was very brave," he said. "She helped people who couldn't fight for themselves." Hope looked at him with wary eyes. "She said you were the light." Langdon's expression flickered. Grief, maybe. I was supposed to protect her. And I failed. Anna broke the silence. "If you want to make it right, start by getting us safe and this evidence to the Attorney General." Langdon nodded to his aide. "Done. Foster, stay close. Once Finch realizes the files reached me, he'll move fast. My people are serving warrants in coordination with state troopers at dawn." I looked down at Hope, who was tracing the brass key with her thumb. "You did good, kid," I murmured. She glanced up. "Mommy said keys open more than doors." Outside, thunder rolled across the valley though the storm had passed. Somewhere below, Finch must have realized his empire was cracking open. And inside that glass house, with the fire flickering and Hope's letter safe on the mantel, I finally felt the first tremor of something close to justice. Langdon's estate came alive at dawn. Motion sensors flickering, guards relaying coded calls, and a low hum of preparation that felt almost military. From the upper balcony, Boise Valley spread below us, pale and still under morning frost. I'd been awake all night. The lockbox lay open on the conference table, files spread like cards. Each document was a confession. Altered ledgers, fraudulent guardianship orders, emails between Finch and a deputy clerk named Samuel Doran, coordinating payouts through shell trusts. The paper trail ran back 5 years. Langdon studied the pages in silence. "It's worse than Danielle said," he murmured. They used false medical evaluations to declare seniors incompetent, moved them into care facilities, drained their accounts, and anyone who asked questions vanished. I finished. Anna entered with 2 coffees, dark circles beneath her eyes. I talked to the AG's liaison. They're drafting emergency warrants for Finch and Doran, but they want a formal statement from Hope's guardian. For now, that's you. I looked over. Me? Until they locate a verified relative. Danielle's file lists a sister, Charlotte Reed, somewhere in Spokane, but records stopped 6 years ago. Langdon closed the folder. My legal team can help trace her. Foster, I need your cooperation until this reaches court. I hesitated. You're funding the suit. Why? He leaned back. Because Finch's office siphoned funds from my company's infrastructure grants. Danielle came to me last year with proof. I told her to hold off until my auditors confirmed it. 2 weeks later, she disappeared. The words hung heavy. From the corner of the room, Hope stirred on the couch, the electric blanket glowing faint orange around her shoulders. She blinked at the window's bright glare. "It's morning," she whispered, rubbing her eyes. "Mommy said the morning means safe." I knelt beside her. "You're safe here, Hope. I promise." Her small hand slipped into mine. "Are we going to find her now?" Anna glanced at me, unsure. "We're trying, sweetheart," she said softly. "We're doing everything we can." Langdon's phone buzzed. He turned away to answer. "Yes?" "Understood. Keep them contained. No, don't engage until the warrants are signed." He hung up, jaw tight. "Finch's men are watching the service road. They know she's here." "Then we move before they do," I said. Anna frowned. "Where would we go? The hospital's compromised, and your department's half under Finch's influence." I looked at the letter on the table, the one marked to Hope. The ink had bled in places, but the closing line still read clear. "The truth is in the care we forgot to give." Danielle was talking about evidence storage, I said suddenly. When she worked for Finch, she mentioned an off-site medical archive in the foothills, old trailers filled with sealed patient files. If she hid anything, it's there. Langdon nodded once. "I'll provide transport. My security detail can escort you. If those files corroborate what's in this box, Finch won't just lose his office. He'll face felony racketeering." Within the hour, a black Suburban rolled through the side gate. Anna strapped Hope into the middle seat, tucking the letter into her jacket. The road wound higher, snow thickening around pine trunks. Midway up the slope, radio static cut through. "Langdon Convoy, this is Delta 1. 2 hostiles trailing from the ridge, unmarked SUV, closing distance." I leaned forward. "How far out?" 500 yards. Gaining." Langdon's driver pressed harder on the gas, but the incline slowed us. Behind, twin headlights sliced through the fog. "Hold steady," I said, checking my sidearm. "If they wanted to shoot, they'd have done it by now. They want the girl." Hope's voice piped up from the back. "They can't take me. Mommy said the key keeps me safe." Her fingers clutched the brass key on its string. A sharp ping shattered the rear window. Warning shot. The SUV veered closer, fishtailing on ice. Anna ducked over Hope, shielding her. "Langdon, now!" I barked. He grabbed the radio. "Delta 1, intercept pattern." Ahead, 2 more SUVs emerged from the trees. Langdon's guards, lights off until the last second. The lead vehicle swerved, boxing in Finch's men. Tires screamed. Metal crunched. Our driver floored it, breaking through the last turn toward the abandoned archive site, a cluster of prefab trailers half buried in snow. When the gates slammed behind us, I jumped out, adrenaline burning cold. "Stay with her," I shouted to Anna. "Langdon, you and I'll search the archive." Inside, dust motes danced in slivers of light from cracked vents. Rows of file cabinets stretched into shadows. I moved fast, checking tags. Then I saw it. An orange sticker labeled Miller, Danielle, Audit Support, Confidential. I yanked open the drawer. Inside was a sealed envelope stamped "Do Not Destroy." Internal Audit, Draft Number 4. Langdon's breath caught. She finished it. I turned the packet over and froze. On the back, a small thumbprint in faded red. Next to it, a handwritten line. For Hope, deliver with truth. Outside, a guard's radio flared. "Contact on the ridge! Shots fired!" Langdon drew a breath, steady. "Get Anna and the girl inside, now." Snow whipped through the open door, and I realized the fight we'd just escaped wasn't over. Finch was coming to erase what was left of his past, and the one child who could prove it. Wind howled through the broken vents, flinging ice against the aluminum siding. The archive compound, 3 rusted trailers bolted end to end, felt like a coffin on the mountain. Langdon's men scrambled to form a perimeter, but the storm shredded visibility to a blur. Inside, the single overhead bulb flickered as I locked the door behind Anna and Hope. The little girl clutched her electric blanket, eyes darting to every sound. "It's okay," I told her, crouching down. "You remember the road you drew yesterday? This is another part of it. We just have to keep following." She nodded, trusting, even though fear trembled in her jaw. Langdon stepped in behind me, phone pressed to his ear. "State troopers are 30 minutes out," he said. "Finch's men cut the Ridge Road. We'll have to hold until the AG's warrant unit arrives." 30 minutes is a long time when someone's desperate, I said. I scanned the files scattered on the steel table. Danielle's audit draft was thick with signatures, time-stamped invoices, and emails linking Finch directly to the falsified guardianships. It was airtight. She must have known they'd come for her once she compiled it. Anna's voice broke the silence. If she hid this much, why not go public sooner? Langdon's gaze hardened. She tried. The local paper refused her documents after Finch's office threatened their grants. So she sent me a copy through my compliance division. I told her to wait until I could secure protection. "And she disappeared before you could," I said quietly. Langdon didn't answer. The guilt in his eyes said enough. A loud crack echoed outside, metal on metal. Then, silence. Anna flinched. That wasn't wind. I killed the light, motioned everyone back. Through the slit of the window, a figure in a parka crept along the outer fence, flashlight darting across the snow. Another shape followed, closer. 2, maybe 3, I whispered. Finch must have sent his own cleanup crew. Langdon's phone vibrated again. He silenced it. "Backup ETA 28 minutes. Too long." I turned to Anna. "There's a crawl space under the middle trailer. Can you fit her through?" Hope's small voice came from the dark. "Where does it go?" "Out back, near the wood line. There's a gully. Stay low and wait until you hear sirens." Anna hesitated. "What about you?" I chambered around. "I'll slow them down." Langdon gripped my shoulder. "You'll need more than that. Take this." He handed over a compact radio and a flashlight. "Channel 6 links to my guard at the gate." "Appreciate it." The door hinges groaned as the wind pushed harder. I eased it open an inch, snow slicing my face, and slipped out. The air stung like needles. My breath hung white in the beam of the flashlight. At the edge of the compound, I saw one of Finch's men crouched beside a generator, trying to cut power. I shouted, "Sheriff's office! Drop it!" He spun, rifle raised. I dove behind a snowmobile frame as the first shot rang out, shattering the fuel can beside me. Diesel misted the air. I fired once, the round pinging off metal just enough to drive him back. Inside, Anna's muffled voice reached through the floorboards. "Hope, crawl faster, honey. Almost there." A second assailant appeared by the fence, dragging a duffel. Something metallic glinted. A gas can. He was going to burn us out. I bolted forward, closing the gap before he could strike the match. The two of us hit the snow hard, rolling. His fist cracked against my jaw. I caught his wrist, slammed it down, heard the lighter snap shut. Over his shoulder, headlights flared through the storm. Langdon's men returning from the lower road. The intruder saw it too. He twisted free and sprinted toward the woods. I raised my weapon, but stopped when I heard the faintest sound behind me. Hope, crying. Anna had pushed her through the crawl space, but the girl had turned back halfway, wedged between the beams. I dropped to my knees. "Hope, you okay?" She reached out, shaking. "The letter fell," she whimpered. "Mommy's letter fell." I saw it lying near the open hatch, fluttering in the draft. I grabbed it and tucked it into her coat. "Got it. Now go. You did perfect, okay?" Outside, another engine roared up the hill. I turned just as the second vehicle skidded to a stop. County plates, flashing blue light. For a second, relief flooded me. Then the door opened, and Gerald Finch himself stepped out. He wasn't dressed for the cold. His polished shoes sank in snow, his expression tight with disbelief and fury. "Lieutenant Foster," he called, voice carrying across the wind. "You're making a career-ending mistake. Hand over the girl and those files, and we can talk." "Talk?" I said, stepping into the light. "You tried to erase a child to hide your theft." His smile was almost pitying. "You have no idea how deep this goes." Langdon joined me, face pale but steady. "Deeper than your freedom, Gerald." For a long moment, none of us moved. Snow whipped between us like a curtain of ghosts. Then, far below, the first wail of sirens echoed through the canyon. Finch heard it too. His expression cracked. He turned to run, but Langdon's guards emerged from the tree line, weapons drawn. "It's over," I said quietly. Behind me, Anna lifted Hope out of the crawl space. The little girl squinted toward the flashing lights. "The light on the hill," she whispered. "Mommy said we'd find it." I crouched beside her. "We did, Hope. We found it." The sirens grew louder, scattering through the valley until the night itself seemed to breathe again. By the time the first patrol cruisers crested the ridge, the storm had thinned to a slow gray drift. Red and blue strobes splashed across the snowfield, turning every shadow into a pulse of color. I'd been through standoffs before, but none had felt this cold. Not in my hands, not in my chest. Finch stood rigid, cuffed between two state troopers. His expensive coat was half frozen, a crust of ice clinging to his collar. He still tried to talk his way out of it. "This is a misunderstanding," he kept saying, voice hoarse. "Those files were stolen corporate property. Langdon's been after my department for years." Langdon's attorney, a calm woman in a camel coat, interrupted without raising her voice. "You can explain that to the Attorney General, Director Finch, preferably under oath." Anna held Hope close under a wool blanket, the hospital logo still faintly visible on the fabric. The girl's cheeks had regained a trace of color. She wasn't shaking anymore, just watching, wide-eyed, as uniformed men and women moved through the site, marking evidence, collecting shell casings, photographing footprints. When the AG's van arrived, I stepped aside for the two lead investigators. They greeted me by name. Apparently Ruiz had already briefed them. "Lieutenant Foster," one said, flipping open a folder. "You've been busy. We received your files from Boise HQ. This," he gestured at the archive, "is about to make half the county comptroller's office very nervous." I exhaled, letting the cold burn the edge of exhaustion out of me. "She did all the work," I said, nodding toward Hope. "Her mother, Danielle Miller. We just followed her trail." The investigator smiled faintly. "That trail's about to change a lot of lives." Langdon came over, brushing snow from his shoulders. "My auditors are cross-referencing every account Finch touched. There's enough to trigger a federal audit." He looked at me then, something almost like respect in his eyes. "You did the right thing, Foster. And you did it when it mattered most." "I almost didn't," I said. "If that storm hadn't pushed me toward the RV graveyard, I'd have never seen her." Langdon's voice softened. Then maybe the storm wasn't random. Back at High Desert Children's Hospital 2 days later, the halls were quieter. The fluorescent lights hummed softly. Hope sat in the pediatric ward playroom, building a tower from plastic blocks. Each layer leaned, then corrected itself, like she was teaching it balance. Anna watched from the doorway, arms folded, hair tied back. "She sleeps through the night now," she said. No more panic when the doors slide open. Good, I said. She asks about her mother every morning. I tell her we're still looking. The search had gone public. Photos of Danielle, the nursing home whistleblower, aired on every Idaho station. Langdon's team had confirmed she'd gone missing en route to deliver her audit draft to the Attorney General's office 6 weeks earlier. They found her car submerged off a service road north of the Snake River. No body, no wallet, just the same handwriting on a scrap of paper in the glove box. If you find her, follow the key. Anna turned to me. She planned everything, didn't she? Looks that way, I said. She knew they'd silence her. So she left the evidence and a way to keep it alive. Hope looked up, waving a hand. Look, it doesn't fall now. Her tower stood straight this time. She grinned at the small victory, then went back to work. The social worker approached with a file. Lieutenant, the AG's office processed your guardianship petition. We need a signature from her next of kin before placement. Any word on that aunt in Spokane? She shook her head. Still verifying, but Anna's filed for temporary custody in the meantime. If you approve, it's within protocol. I looked at Anna. She smiled, nervous but steady. I've done foster work before, she said. But this? She's different. She listens. Hope turned, clutching her drawing. A small house on a hill, light spilling from the windows. Can we live there? She asked. Anna knelt beside her. Someday, she whispered, when everything's finished. Later that evening, I stood outside the hospital as dusk settled. The air smelled of thawing asphalt and wet pine. Ruiz pulled up in his truck, window rolled down. Finch cracked, he said, trying to trade testimony for leniency. Says the deputy clerk's the one who handled the disappearances. Doran's already in custody. And Danielle? Still missing. But they're expanding the search. You did what you could, Brian. I watched the snowmelt running along the curb, carving small channels through the grime. Not enough, I said. She trusted me before anyone else did. Ruiz hesitated. You saved her kid. That counts. As he drove off, I glanced at the hospital windows above. In one of them, Hope's silhouette leaned against the glass, small hand pressed to the pane. I raised mine back. She smiled. The storm had broken, but something else had started. Something slower, steadier. A fight for the truth she carried in her mother's name. Morning sunlight broke through Boise's winter haze, laying soft gold across the hospital's east wing. For the first time in weeks, the snow had stopped, and the world seemed briefly, impossibly quiet. I brought coffee for Anna and myself, the smell cutting through the sterile air. She was reading from a stack of adoption papers at the nurse's station, pen tapping against the clipboard. She's cleared for release tomorrow, she said, half smiling. Child Services approved the transfer to my home, temporary guardianship for 6 months. If her aunt shows up, we'll revisit. But until then, she'll have a place. I nodded. She'll need routine, stability. Anna looked up at me. So will you. The words landed heavier than she probably intended. I hadn't thought much about life beyond the case. My days had blurred into interviews, affidavits, depositions. Finch was awaiting arraignment. And Langdon's auditors were still tracing the stolen funds through shell companies. The case had become bigger than any of us, but hope remained its fragile center. When I walked into her room, she was packing crayons into a hospital tote, humming to herself. The electric blanket, washed and neatly folded, sat at the foot of her bed. Hey, partner, I said. Big day tomorrow. She turned, eyes bright. Miss Anna says there's a tree in her yard, with lights. That's right. She lives near the ridge. You'll see stars again from there. Hope pointed to the laminated letter I'd framed in a plastic sleeve for her. Mommy's letter doesn't have to stay here, right? No, I said gently. It goes wherever you go. She pressed her hand flat over the words, to Hope, and whispered, Mommy's still in the light. By afternoon, the AG's office released its preliminary findings to the press. Every major Idaho outlet ran the headline. County fraud, network exposed. Whistleblower's trail leads to federal probe. Langdon stood before the cameras on the courthouse steps, polished but subdued. "This is not about politics," he said. "It's about dignity, about a woman who refused to let silence become complicity." I watched from the sidelines, coat collar turned up against the wind. Anna and Hope waited in the car nearby. The little girl drew on the fogged window with her finger, tracing shapes that looked like roads and rivers. Langdon found me afterward. "She should be with family soon," he said. "My legal team located Charlotte Reed, Danielle's aunt, in Spokane. She's alive, running a community center. We're arranging transport for her to visit." I exhaled, tension easing for the first time in days. "You'll keep funding the case?" Langdon's gaze hardened. "To the end. Danielle's name will clear every headline Finch corrupted." He started to walk away, then turned back. "You ever think about staying on the task force? The AG could use someone like you." "I'll think about it," I said. But part of me already knew I wouldn't. I was too close to this one, too much of myself tangled in it. That night, the city thawed. Slush streaked the curbs, and the air smelled of wet cedar and diesel. I parked outside Anna's small rental home near the ridge, headlights cutting across the snow-packed driveway. Inside, warmth and the smell of soup. Hope was sprawled on the living room rug, drawing with a stubby pencil. She held up her sketch. "Look, it's the light on the hill." The picture showed 3 figures, one tall, one with long hair, and one small, holding a key, standing beneath a glowing, windowed house. Anna smiled, ladling soup into bowls. "She's been at it since dinner." "Not bad," I said, crouching beside the drawing. "Who's that?" Hope pointed. "That's you, and Miss Anna, and Mommy's light. She said you found it." Something in my throat tightened. "Yeah," I whispered. "We did." Anna's phone buzzed on the counter. Unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. A woman's voice crackled through. "This is Charlotte Reed. I just saw the news. Is my niece safe?" Anna's eyes flicked to me. "She's safe. Would you like to speak to her?" There was a pause, a tremor in the woman's tone. "Please." Anna handed the phone to Hope. "Sweetheart, it's your Aunt Charlotte." Hope's small fingers wrapped around the phone. "Hello?" Silence. Then, softly, "You sound just like your mother." Hope blinked, unsure whether to smile or cry. "Mommy said someone would come." Charlotte's voice broke. "She was brave, honey. She wanted you to be found." Anna turned away, wiping her eyes. After the call ended, the little girl curled into the couch, holding the phone close like it carried warmth. "She said she's coming soon," she murmured. "That's good news," I said, crouching beside her. She tilted her head. "Are you coming back too?" The question caught me off guard. "What do you mean?" "When you go with the police again." I smiled faintly. "I'll always come back, Hope. That's what grown-ups should do." She nodded, satisfied, and leaned her head against Anna's shoulder. Outside, the ridge lights shimmered faintly through the melting snow, just bright enough to trace a path down the valley. And, in the faint hum of the house, the kettle whistling, the whisper of a child's breathing, I realized the case had turned into something I hadn't expected. Not just justice, but quiet repair. Charlotte Reed arrived 3 days later, mid-morning, pale sunlight flooding the ridge road as her rental car pulled into Anna's driveway. She stepped out slowly, wrapped in a dark pea coat, breath fogging in the cold. 60, maybe 65, hair pinned in a bun streaked with gray. But her eyes, blue like Danielle's, were alert and searching. Hope was waiting on the porch, wearing Anna's oversized sweater and clutching the laminated letter. She froze at first sight of the stranger. Then Charlotte knelt, boots crunching against the half-melted snow. "Hi, sweetheart," she said softly. "I'm your Aunt Charlotte." Hope studied her face, then the silver locket around her neck, a small pressed daisy inside. "Mommy had one like that." Charlotte's voice cracked. "She gave it to me when we were kids. Said it was for luck." She reached out a trembling hand. "May I?" Hope hesitated, then stepped forward and wrapped her arms around her. Charlotte held on tight, eyes glistening. "You're safe now, honey. No one's ever taking you away again." Anna and I stood by the porch rail, giving them space. I felt something shift, like the air itself exhaled after weeks of holding its breath. Inside, coffee steamed in mugs while the women talked. Charlotte laid out the story, piece by piece. How she'd lost touch with Danielle after moving to Washington. How letters stopped coming when Danielle took the nursing home job. How she'd filed her own missing person report that never got processed. "They told me she probably wanted a new life," Charlotte said bitterly. "But I knew my sister. She wouldn't disappear without saying goodbye." I nodded. "She didn't. She left this." I handed her a copy of the audit draft and the original note, "If you find her, follow the key." Charlotte traced the writing with her thumb. "That's her hand." Hope watched from the couch, legs swinging. "Aunt Charlotte, Mommy said keys open more than doors." Charlotte smiled faintly. "Your mom always talked like that. Everything meant something bigger." Anna poured more coffee. She made sure her work would live on. The Attorney General's office called this morning. They're filing the class action suit next week. "That fast?" I asked. "Langdon's foundation is underwriting witness protection for surviving patients' families," she said. Gerald Finch's bail was denied. Doran turned state's evidence. Charlotte looked between us. "So, it's over?" I hesitated. "Not completely. We still haven't found Danielle." The room fell quiet except for the faint ticking of the kitchen clock. Hope set down her crayon, looking from me to her aunt. "She's not gone," she said with simple conviction. "Mommy's waiting where the light is." Charlotte blinked, tears brimming. "The light on the hill?" Hope nodded. Anna met my eyes. "She said that before. Maybe she remembers something." I leaned forward. "Hope, sweetheart, when you say the light on the hill, can you tell me what you see?" The little girl frowned, concentrating. "Snow, a big tree, and water that moves." She made a wavy motion with her hand. "Mommy said the light helps people who can't come home." Charlotte covered her mouth. "That sounds like the reservoir overlook near Owyhee Dam. We used to go there as kids. There's a cross someone built out of driftwood. It catches sunlight at dusk. She took Hope there once, didn't she?" Anna looked up. "If Danielle went missing driving north from the county, that route passes the dam." I felt my pulse quicken. "Then that's where we start." The next morning, the sky was clear enough to see for miles. We drove west in my truck, me, Anna, Charlotte, and Hope, following the winding road toward the dam. The snow gave way to hard frost and yellow scrub, the land opening wide and silent. Hope leaned against the window, humming softly. The brass key hung around her neck, glinting in the light. When the reservoir came into view, Charlotte gasped. "There," she said, pointing. "That ridge." We parked near the overlook where a weathered wooden cross stood against the blue water. The ground was uneven, a mix of gravel and snowmelt. Hope climbed out carefully, clutching my hand. "This is it," she whispered. Charlotte knelt beside a patch of disturbed soil near the guardrail. Something half buried in the frost caught the light. A small silver bracelet engraved with initials. D.M. Anna drew in a sharp breath. "Oh, God!" I crouched, brushing away ice. Next to the bracelet lay a fragment of cloth. Dark green, torn at the edge. Charlotte covered her mouth. "That's her scarf. I gave it to her last Christmas." For a moment, no one spoke. The air felt too thin to breathe. Then Hope tugged at my sleeve. "Mommy's light," she said, pointing toward the far ridge. The morning sun had broken through the clouds, reflecting off something metallic near the tree line. "Stay here," I said gently. I climbed the short incline, boots crunching through snow. There, caught in the brush, was the rusted corner of a vehicle's rear fender, half buried in silt and ice. "Charlotte," I called down. "You might want to see this." She came running, tears freezing on her cheeks. Together, we brushed away enough snow to see the license plate. The numbers matched Danielle Miller's missing vehicle. Anna whispered, "We should call it in." I nodded, pulling my radio from my jacket. "Dispatch, this is Lieutenant Foster. We've located a submerged vehicle near Owyhee Dam Overlook. Plate number—" My voice caught for a second. "Possible occupant deceased." But Hope shook her head slowly, her voice barely above the wind. "No," she said. "Mommy's not in the dark. She's under the light." 2 hours later, the recovery team lifted the car from the shallows. The windshield was shattered inward, mud caked along the frame. Inside, on the passenger seat, was a sealed plastic folder. The front label read, "To the Attorney General. Deliver only if I don't return." Anna's eyes filled. "She left her final copy here." Charlotte wept silently beside her niece, both holding the same letter. Hope pressed her forehead against her aunt's arm. "Mommy kept her promise," she whispered. The sun slipped lower, catching the wooden cross in gold. Light rippled across the water, bright and unbroken. And for the first time, the cold didn't hurt. It felt like something was finally thawing. The forensic team worked quietly as the afternoon sun slid behind the ridge, washing the valley in amber. I stood by the guardrail, coat zipped to my chin, watching divers move like slow shadows in the shallows below. The air smelled of wet metal and thawing pine. When the evidence tech handed me the recovered folder, its waterproof seal still intact, my hands shook slightly. Danielle's name was written in the same careful penmanship as the note I'd found that first night, letters pressed deep enough to dent the plastic. I carried it up to where Charlotte and Anna sat with Hope wrapped in the electric blanket. The girl had stopped crying hours ago. She just watched the light move across the water, as if waiting for some invisible signal. "This was on the passenger seat," I said. "It's addressed to the Attorney General." Charlotte took it with both hands. She knew she wouldn't make it back. Anna murmured. She drove into the storm to protect this file. I crouched beside them. The car wasn't an accident. The impact marks are clean. Someone forced her off the service road. She must have crawled out long enough to hide this in the passenger seat before the water rose. Charlotte nodded, tears sliding silently. "That's exactly what she'd do. Finish the job, no matter the cost." Hope looked up at me. "Mommy was brave, huh?" I smiled softly. "Braver than anyone I've ever met." At sunset, troopers packed up the site. Charlotte signed the official release for the evidence, her hand steady now. Langdon's driver arrived with hot coffee and a convoy of vehicles to take them back to Boise. Before leaving, Charlotte turned to me. "What happens now?" "The AG's office will finalize the civil and criminal cases," I said. "But Danielle already won. Every document she hid exposes Finch's system from top to bottom." Charlotte exhaled, half sob, half laugh. "Then she can rest." Hope tugged on her coat. "Mommy's not gone. She's just in the light now." Charlotte knelt, smiling through her tears. "Maybe you're right, sweetheart." As they drove away, I stayed until the last taillight disappeared down the winding road. The cross on the ridge caught the last thread of sunlight, glowing like a beacon. I thought about that first night, the RV graveyard, the trembling child clutching a letter, and realized this moment had always been coming. The light on the hill wasn't just a place, it was the promise that someone would finish what Danielle started. A week later, the courthouse was packed. Cameras lined the marble steps, reporters jostling for sound bites as state officials walked in. Langdon stood beside the AG, tall and composed, flanked by his lawyers. I sat in the back row, plain suit, coffee cooling beside me. Charlotte testified first, voice clear, recounting her sister's warnings about the guardianship program. Then Anna detailed the hospital records, dozens of patients falsely declared unfit, their assets drained. Finally, Langdon presented Danielle's audit draft and the folder from the submerged car. When the judge read aloud Danielle's final written statement, the room fell completely silent. "If you are reading this, it means my daughter is safe. What we do with power defines who deserves it. I leave the proof to those still willing to see the light." Charlotte broke down quietly in the witness box. Hope sat beside Anna in the gallery, the brass key gleaming at her neck. She didn't look confused or frightened, just solemn, as if she understood what her mother's words meant even without the weight of years. The verdict came fast. Finch and Doran, guilty on multiple counts of fraud, conspiracy, and obstruction. Federal indictments pending. The courtroom erupted in flashes of cameras and murmurs of relief. Langdon turned to me, shaking my hand. "Justice moves slowly," he said, "but sometimes it catches up." "Because someone left a map," I replied. That evening, I visited the ridge alone. The reservoir lay still beneath a lavender sky, the wooden cross now draped with wildflowers left by locals. I placed a small laminated photo beside it, Hope and Charlotte smiling on the hospital lawn. "She's doing okay," I said quietly to the wind. "Started school this week, drawing again." The nightmare stopped. The breeze shifted, cold and gentle, and for a heartbeat I could have sworn I heard a woman's voice carried through it. Soft, resolute, the same tone I remembered from that old report 3 years ago. "Thank you for finding her." I closed my eyes. "You found us first." Later, back in town, I met Anna at the small cafe near the courthouse. She slid a newspaper across the table. "Mother's Courage Exposes County Fraud. Light on the Hill Foundation launched for child advocacy." Langdon's foundation had already pledged funding for a new wing at High Desert Children's, dedicated to whistleblowers and child protection. Charlotte had agreed to oversee it with Anna's help. "Guess you're out of a job," Anna said, smiling. "I think I've had enough paperwork to last me a lifetime," I said. She sipped her coffee. "You ever wonder why Danielle trusted you before anyone else?" "Maybe because she knew I wouldn't stop once I started." She tilted her head. "Or maybe she saw the same thing in you she wanted for Hope, a reason to keep believing." Through the cafe window, the evening lights flickered on across the valley. For the first time in months, Boise looked peaceful, alive. When I stepped outside, I saw the Hope waiting in Charlotte's car across the street, waving her small hand through the glass. The key hung over her jacket, catching a glint of the setting sun. I raised my hand in return. She smiled, wide and certain. The storm was gone, the trail complete, and somewhere above the valley, in the soft afterglow, the light on the hill burned steady, just as Danielle had promised. Spring came late to Boise that year. By March, the snow had finally melted into rivers that streaked the foothills, and the wind no longer carried frost but the smell of wet earth. The city, once bruised by scandal, had begun to heal, quietly, persistently. The new light on the Hill Foundation opened its doors in a repurposed courthouse annex. The lobby smelled of fresh paint and cedar polish. Framed photographs lined the walls. Whistleblowers, advocates, and families who'd once been silenced now honored in print. A small brass plaque near the entrance read, "In memory of Danielle Miller, for every truth that refused to drown." Anna had taken the role of director, Charlotte the board chair. Hope was the foundation's honorary ambassador, though no one used that word around her. She was just the kid who liked to hand out cookies during the volunteer meetings and draw chalk hearts on the front steps. When I stopped by that afternoon, she was sitting cross-legged in the hallway, sketching with colored pencils. The brass key still hung from her neck, worn smooth from her fingers. She looked up, grinning. "Hi, Lieutenant Brian." I knelt. "Just Brian now, kiddo. I'm officially retired." Her eyes widened. "You quit the police?" I smiled. "Didn't quit. Just changed who I help." I handed her a folded pamphlet, printed on cream paper, the foundation's logo embossed in blue. "They asked me to lead their community outreach. Guess that means I work for you now." Hope laughed, delighted. "Then you have to follow my rules." "What's rule number 1? She pretended to think. "No lying, no being mean, and cookies every Friday." "Seems fair." Anna appeared from her office, clipboard in hand. "You two making deals again?" "Binding ones," I said. "She's tougher than the AG." Anna shook her head, smiling. "Good. We could use tough." Her eyes softened as she looked at Hope. She's been drawing again. Keeps sketching the ridge. Everyone's a little brighter than the last. Hope held up her latest picture. The wooden cross still stood on the hill, but now it glowed under a golden sunrise, the water below alive with color. Above it, 3 small figures stood hand in hand. "That's you," she said, pointing to the tallest. "That's Miss Anna, and that's Mommy's light." Something in my chest tightened, that familiar ache of gratitude and grief intertwined. "It's beautiful," I said quietly. "You're getting really good at that." She smiled. "Mommy says keep drawing the truth until it shines." Charlotte called from the doorway, her voice warm but brisk. "Hope, time to help with the ribbon cutting." Hope jumped up, gathering her papers. "Coming!" Outside, a small crowd had gathered. City officials, reporters, neighbors. The air shimmered faintly with the promise of spring rain. Langdon stood near the podium, hands clasped behind his back, more reserved than I'd ever seen him. When he spotted me, he gave a single nod. Acknowledgement, not pride, Anna took the microphone first. "This place exists because one woman refused to look away. Danielle Miller's courage uncovered a system that preyed on silence. Today, we turn that silence into protection for others." Charlotte spoke next, her voice steady but soft. "My sister believed light was something you carry, something you pass on when others can't see their way forward. This foundation will keep that light alive." Then she motioned to Hope. The little girl stepped forward, holding a pair of bright yellow scissors. The crowd chuckled gently. "Ready?" Charlotte asked. Hope nodded solemnly. "For Mommy." The ribbon snapped clean, curling away in the breeze. Applause rippled through the crowd, but Hope just stood there a moment, staring up at the sky where clouds drifted past the afternoon sun. "She always liked days like this," Charlotte whispered. Langdon leaned close to me. "For all the power we build in this world, it's still children who remind us what's worth protecting." "Yeah," I said quietly. "They're the ones who teach us to start over." That evening, after the crowd dispersed, I drove alone to the ridge. The cross stood where it always had, but now there was a small lantern hung beside it, a solar light that glowed steadily even as dusk deepened. A single daisy rested at its base. I sat on the hood of my truck, watching the reservoir darken, and let the quiet settle. No sirens, no static on the radio. Just wind and water and the hum of something almost like peace. In my jacket pocket, I carried one last letter. The AG's office had mailed it that morning. It was addressed to me but written months ago. Found among Danielle's personal effects in a safety deposit box. The handwriting was familiar, careful. "If you're reading this, it means my plan worked. Please tell my daughter she was never lost. Hope was my map, my reason. Follow her light when you forget your own. DM." I folded it back into the envelope and set it beside the lantern. "Message delivered," I said aloud. For a long time I just stayed there, watching the first stars surface one by one. Down in the valley, the new foundation's lights flickered to life, tracing a faint glow that reached all the way up the hillside. And as the night deepened, I realized the promise had come full circle. A child once found in the snow had become the keeper of her mother's light. A community once blinded by greed had remembered what dignity meant. And a weary cop who'd nearly given up had learned that sometimes redemption isn't about saving others, it's about being saved by the ones you find. The lantern's glow caught the wind, bright and steady. Somewhere in the quiet, it felt like Danielle smiled. The light on the hill burned, and this time it stayed.